Boy, you don't need a fancy introduction today because it's Larry Brown, Hall of Famer Larry Brown. Larry Brown, who has done essentially every single thing you can possibly do in the game of basketball. He has done it. He has won it. He has achieved it. It's all happened. And he's in the studio today. Coach Brown, thanks so much for coming by.
I'm glad to be here. I got to see one granddaughter and hopefully get to see a few more before this day is over.
You've got several family members at Carolina right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually 4 in Chapel Hill right now. One just graduated. One's a freshman, and 2 are going to graduate in the spring.
Terrific.
So gives me reason to be close by, which makes it even better.
So just catch folks up, kind of what is going on in your life right now? What are you doing these days? Just so we're going to talk about the history in a second, but just what's going on presently with you?
On board.
That's why you're here with us.
I'm not good at being idle. Fortunately, I have TV, and you get to see a lot of games, a lot of people that have impacted my life that are doing what I got to do, which makes it nice. If I finish 500 after a night, it's a pretty good night. A lot of good teams out there, but I like to smell the gym. But again, there's nothing like, being involved on a day-to-day basis, and I kind of miss that.
Sure.
But the greatest part is watching Hubert and seeing team playing well, and this is the best time of year to be playing your best, so hopefully that'll continue.
What was it about being involved with the team on a day-to-day basis that you love so much?
Well, I never had to work, which I see a lot of people today have to go to work. I never felt that in any way. And I think being involved with the coaches that have taught me, my high school coach actually played baseball and basketball in North Carolina, Bobby Gersten. Then Coach McGuire recruited my mom, and I always wanted to be a coach, and, playing for him, and then Coach Smith, obviously, I realized this is what I wanted to do. So I don't know how many people can say they work for, for people like Coach Smith and Coach McGuire and enable me to, want to do what they did. I never expected to do it on the level they did. I was hopeful I could be a high school coach and coach baseball, basketball, and football and have the summers off. But, life had a way of changing.
What were those – Carolina fans know so much about Coach Smith, but you were there right from the beginning with his relationship with Carolina as far as the coaching is concerned. What was a young, early years Coach Smith like, and what was it like for you to kind of see him begin his career?
Well, he was he graduated from Kansas, was in ROTC, I think. He got stationed at the Air Force Academy before it actually moved to Colorado Springs. It was in Denver. He actually was the golf coach. And the reason he was the golf coach, Pepper Rogers and Coach Smith were assigned to the academy, and they had an all-sports day, badminton, tennis, bowling, and whoever lost became the golf coach. So he became the golf coach and then came to Chapel Hill before I got here. He was with Donnie Walsh and Yogi Poteet and Jim Hudak and Kenny McComb. He was the freshman coach and varsity coach, only 3 coaches at the time. So when I got here, he wasn't the freshman coach. Coach McGuire moved him up, and I didn't have a real good relationship with him at that time. He was more involved with the varsity. Coach Roseman was my coach. But when I got up to the varsity, because freshmen were ineligible, he was a little different. He was a little aloof. I always thought that he favored some of the freshman players that he had before me. And then he was a lot different from Coach McGuire. Coach McGuire was, we'd scrimmage all day. We wouldn't even do a drill. And you'd look forward to going to practice. And the only way you could go from the first team to the blue team was if there was a death in the family. But I really enjoyed practice. And then when Coach McGuire would be away, recruiting or speaking, Coach Smith would take over, and everything was by the clock, timed. Every drill was specific to how he thought we should play. And it was really a learning experience for me that I think was rewarding in a lot of ways, because there was a purpose to every one of his drills. I remember my sophomore year, just the difference between Coach McGuire and Coach Smith. We were in the Dixie Classic playing Villanova the last year, the Dixie Classic. And they went over, Coach Smith was going over Villanova's zone press, full court, telling everybody where you're supposed to be, who's your outlet, and, who's going to bring it up. Coach McGuire stopped him and he said, "Dean, that's why I recruited these guys. Just give them the ball and they'll break the press." Then later on, me becoming a coach, I realized, hey, maybe I got to prepare like Coach Smith. But people don't realize when he took over, the basketball scandal had broken, and the Grady University of North Carolina was being penalized. Mm-hmm. So he took over. We had a 16-game schedule. He could not recruit out of the ACC area. Two of the best players coming back, Yogi Poteet and Kenny McComb, weren't eligible. So he was dealt a really bad hand. And the schedule of 14 ACC games, and I think Kentucky and Indiana. So there were no easy games. The next year, Billy Cunningham came and we played 20 games. So he was really dealt a really bad hand. And today, when Hubert loses 2 games in a row, people are saying maybe we ought to fire him. Well, Coach's first 4 or 5 years, weren't the greatest because of the obstacles he faced. And Chancellor Aycock saw something in Coach that he felt, this is the kind of human being I want to run our program. The rest is history. We went to 3 straight Final Fours. That group with Rusty Clark, Bunning, Grubar, Tuttle, and Joe Brown won the ACC championship 3 years in a row, the conference tournament 3 years in a row, went to the Final Four 3 years. Unfortunately, Lou Alcindor happened to be there at that time. But, to know what Coach Smith meant, what he brought to this university, and I think it's just amazing. And now I see what Bill did, what Roy did, and now what Hubert's going to do. It's all because of the people that came before him.
I think when current fans think about Carolina-Duke animosity, they think about Tyler Hansbrough and Gerald Henderson, or Eric Montross at the free throw line, or they go way back, maybe like late 80s, J.R. Reed. But it all started with this guy sitting in our studio. What can you tell us about that Carolina-Duke game? I feel like we have to hear it from you. You were there.
Yeah, well, one of the funny things, I was in Philly, and my son and daughter were watching TV with a bunch of their friends over the holidays, and it came out on ESPN, the Duke rivalry, how it began. And the first thing they showed was a fight between Artie Heyman and myself. And they came running out and said, "Dad, I didn't know you started this rivalry." And, but Artie Heyman and I were rivals in high school. Our towns were one town away from each other. He was at Oceanside, I was at Long Beach. And we used to have fights all the time on the playground. It was just a normal thing. But he signed to go to Carolina with me. And at the last minute, his stepdad had an argument with Coach McGuire, and he was released, and he ended up going to Duke. He tried to get me to go with him, but Coach Bubis, who became the Duke coach, recruited me at NC State, and he wasn't allowed to talk to me, when he took the Duke job. And I thought Duke was a terrible place anyway. But
can't argue with that.
Still true all these years later.
So make a long story short, Artie was a great player, a little kind of crazy human being, but that's what probably made him so good. And we were down 4 points late in the game, and at this time, after a score, the clock didn't stop in the last 2 minutes. So if we'd have just laid the ball in the basket and they'd just let it roll, the game would have been over. And Coach McGuire just told me to drive the ball, and he kind of clotheslined me, and I don't know what got into me, but I tried to throw a punch, and next thing I knew, the fans came. Most of the Duke football players sat on the front row, and Johnny Fry and Howard Hurt, two of the Duke players, grabbed me and kind of protected me, and it was a really bad fight. Artie got kicked out of the game. I didn't get kicked out. And I think if there wasn't so much commotion, if he got kicked out, we might have had some technicals, and you never know what would have happened. But to make a long story short, I got suspended. Donnie Walsh got suspended, and Artie. Artie's season didn't end. Ours did, because we won the conference, but Coach McGuire wouldn't let us play in the tournament because we were on NCAA probation for one semester, some bogus thing. So my season ended. I think I played about 12, 14 games. Artie went on to make All-American and do pretty well. But the rivalry was there way before my fight.
That just jump-started it a little bit, gave a little spark.
Yeah, well, I was told when I matriculated here not to go to Durham. So my high school coach told me, and I listened to my high school coach. The only time I went to Durham was when we played.
You were an integral part of the ABA. What was the ABA like? I don't know if even hardcore basketball fans know much about it now. What was that experience like?
Well, after the Olympics, I came back to coach here, which was the most fun I think I ever had in coaching. I was the freshman coach, assistant varsity coach. Coach never let me miss a practice. I'd go in every day and give him the practice plan, and he'd hand it right back to me and just let me learn how to coach. And, I was lucky. The first group was Rusty and Grubar and Bunning, that group. And so that was amazing. After my first year, I got offered the Connecticut job. Coach Hickey, who was a football coach here, became the AD at Connecticut, and I turned it down. I remember coming to coach and saying, I'm not going to Connecticut, Coach. I want to come back. He said, you're crazy. You may never get another job like that. I said, well, I have a great job. And then after my second year, which was with Charlie Scott and Fogler and Delaney, the ABA started. And I came to Coach and I said, Coach, I got an opportunity to play again and play in the ABA. He said, no, don't. You crazy. You stay here. You'll get any job you want. We're going to be really good from now on. I said, well, someday I won't be able to play. So I said, I'd like to try. So Doug Moe was playing in Italy at the time, and they wanted Doug real badly. And so Doug and I ended up being drafted by New Orleans. I was drafted because of Doug, and we went down together. And Sean Morton Downey Jr., the band leader's son, who was a talk show host, was the GM. And I remember we we flew down to New Orleans, and we just knew that the office was at the Barone building, and we went up and there was a directory, and everybody was telling me the ABA wasn't going to make it. And I looked in the directory and there was no New Orleans Buccaneers. And then I saw Sean Morton Downey Jr.'s name, and Doug and I ended up going upstairs, and we ended up walking to this room, and Sean Morton Downey is smoking with both hands and just telling Doug how excited he was to have him there and be part of the New Orleans Buccaneers and name some of the players that we were going to have. He never even looked at me. And Doug said, I'm here, I want to sign. You know, Doug was making $11,000 playing in Padua in Italy. And he said, we both had heard this isn't going. Marty Blake, who's an NBA guy, told me, Larry, the league's not going to make it. So Doug said, how much are you going to give me? And he said, well, I'll give you a 2-year contract. I'll give you $20,000 the first year, $22,000 the second. And Doug's really excited. And Doug said, well, we heard that this league's not going to go over. Can you give me a bonus, you know, a signing bonus? And he said, sure, I'll give you a bonus. And he wrote out a check for $5,000. And then he said, what about Harv? And I was just sitting there, and he said, well, we'll give you $12,500. And Doug said, is it guaranteed? And he said, yeah, it's guaranteed. And Doug said, what about if Harv starts? And he said, well, I'll give him $5,000 if he starts. So now I'm thinking, whoa, no, I'm doing all right. I think I'm going to start. And then he said, hey, Larry, I know you've been coaching in North Carolina. The Saints are coming to New Orleans at the same time. We might need some goodwill in the city. We'd like to send you around and give clinics. And Doug said, what are you going to give him? And he said, well, I'll give him $8,000. Doug said, shoot, he's going to make more than me. And that's how I started. And the league went around signing kids, you know, young African-American kids predominantly that, you know, like Julius Serving, Maurice Lucas, and Charlie Scott, you just name them, unbelievable players. Mm-hmm. And it was going to give them an opportunity that was far greater than the chance of playing in the NBA. The game was going to be faster, the three-point shot, the red, white, and blue ball. So there were a lot of unbelievable young players that had an opportunity to play in that league that wouldn't have had a chance to play in the NBA, because very few rookies actually played in the NBA in the 60s. You know, you'd have to play 2 or 3 years before you earned the right to play. Yeah. In the ABA, everybody got to play right away. And the league was tremendous. The coaching was great. The opportunity to play with a lot of young special guys was something that was really good. And for me, I played for Babe McCarthy, Al Bianchi, Alex Hannum, all unbelievable coaches, which eventually helped me in my career.
We cannot talk about the ABA without talking about Larry Brown's fashion ensembles during that time of your career, specifically the denim like jumpsuit thing. Did you have any idea what a fashion pioneer you were at this point in your life?
They were work overalls, and I was going to work. But we, you know, we didn't have any dress code. You could wear bell bottoms and knick-knack shirts and, like you said, overalls. It didn't really matter. But the greatest thing is when Doug and I got the chance to coach together, the first thing we did was we got an opportunity to go to a warehouse in New York City to buy clothes, discounted clothes. So we walk into this warehouse together, and there's just rows and rows of suits, sport coats, sweaters, polo shirts, anything you can name. And they give you these 2 shopping carts to go through because you're going to get everything cost left half.
Yeah.
So if you had a $32 polo shirt, you could get it for $8. So they send us out. He goes to the area with the tall men, and I go to I'm mannequin size. You know, so I go out, and I have a lady with me that's helping me, and I'm just grabbing stuff. And I must have been out there an hour or more, and I filled up, 2 of these big shopping carts. And I go back in there, and Doug's with about 4 employees. They're all smoking and drinking coffee. And he had 2 suits. He had a brown one and a blue one. And I said, Doug, what are you doing? He said, Larry, I can wear the brown coat with the blue pants. So I got 4 outfits.
Just smart
what do
shopping.
I need? So that was how we got started. And the fashion thing was really funny. Adidas came and wanted to outfit all the coaches. And we went to play Virginia, and Coach Bianchi and the trainer came out in this Adidas outfit. They looked like they were in a bowling alley. The only thing, they didn't have Joe's Bar on the back. And Doug and I, we looked at them, and we just started laughing. That lasted 1 game, and everybody went back to dressing the way they wanted. One thing, Coach McGuire was an unbelievable dresser. And he really changed Coach Smith because, Coach Smith came from Topeka, Kansas, Emporia. They didn't really care about how they dressed, but Coach McGuire really cared. And all the players that played for him, cared because of the way he looked. And I really think it changed Coach a lot.
Mm-hmm. There's so many teams or players or moments or championships that we could talk about. One that certainly comes to mind, of course, is the national title in 1988 and Danny Manning and that whole experience. One of the all-time hot streaks, it feels like, in college basketball history with Danny Manning and that team. Just what are your memories from that run and that championship and that really special group that particular year?
Well, the thing I remember, we had the best team in '86. We lost to Duke in the semis, but we had one of our best players tore an ACL during the game, and we had 3 kids foul out. Danny played 20 minutes. So going forward, that really stuck in everybody's mind because we felt, we were pretty special. 88, anything bad that you thought could happen to a team happened to us. The kid that tore his ACL tore another one over Christmas. I think we lost 9 players, either academics or for other reasons. Had to bring in 2 football players. We lost 5 games in a row during that season. And all I remember during that losing streak, I felt we were getting better. And the kids felt we were getting better. We had a chance to win every one of those games, and probably because of my management, we kind of had a way of losing. But we just started to get better. We had the best player. And if you look at the history of the NCAA tournament, usually the team with the best player is going to have a chance to win the national championship. So we just started to get better and better. We won games we didn't think we could win. We won in all different ways. And it just built this feeling that, maybe something good's going to happen. The NCAA tournament is, you get seeded, but it's all about matchups. Somebody who's seeded very high might get beat early, and you never know. But it seemed like every matchup we had was against a team we had a chance to beat, or a team that had beaten us, where we felt if we did things a little bit differently, maybe we could come out on top. So we ended up playing K-State, who had beaten us during the year. Mitch Richmond broke a 55-game winning streak we had on our home court. We lost in overtime in that game. We ended up playing them in Detroit in a round of 8. It was the first time, actually, Kansas had ever played K-State out of the state of Kansas.
Wow.
And we ended up beating them, which was a really huge win to go to the Final Four. And then in the Final Four, you had Duke, who we played and lost in overtime. Krzyzewski played a zone against us, and I got brain dead, and we got beat. Then they were in it. Arizona was in it, and they were Arizona, Duke, and Oklahoma were all rated top 4 or 5 teams. Oklahoma we had lost to twice, but the last time we lost to them, Danny fouled out. It was at their place, but we had a chance to win. So we ended up first round in the Final Four. We played Duke, and it got off to a great start. They came back, and we ended up winning at the end because we had the best player. And then Oklahoma, who averaged 103 points a game, beating us twice, actually tore down the nets in our arena when they clinched the tournament.
Wow.
And then left the shower running in the locker room and flooded it. So
Other than that, they were real classy about it.
Yeah, we had something to think about getting ready to play them. And the first half was 50-50. It was on the 50th anniversary of the NCAA tournament, and it was at a place where Coach McGuire had won in 57. So shoot, I thought karma is on our side, but they had averaged 103 points a game. I didn't think we could win going up and down, but the kids all did. And I think they huddled up after I said, let's play our game. They decided, forget what Coach said. Second half, they allowed us to control the tempo a little bit, and we ended up winning by 4, and we slowed it down, and Danny took over. He was phenomenal in that game. And we had 2 football players play. One of them got 7 points in the first half.
Wow.
In the game. And, so it was amazing. You know, you look back on it, and it almost reminded me a lot of what Hubert was doing his first year here.
Yeah.
You know, the way they beat Duke at Duke, which is such a special night, the way they did it. And then to go as far as they did. And then it was unusual for me because I have ties to Kansas all of a sudden. You know, that's involved. I remember the year Kansas, UCLA, UNC, and Memphis were in the tournament.
2008, yeah.
I got invited. Ended up taking my family. I ended up sitting in the Kansas section because they had given me the seats. And I remember my kids looking at me and saying, Dad, this is the greatest. We should be a college coach. And I said, well, it doesn't happen every year where you go to the Final Four. They said, well, you had a relationship with UCLA, with Kansas, with North Carolina, and John Calipari's at Memphis. Surely we'll be here all the time. It didn't work out that way.
So much success at so many places. As we said, you've been in the Hall of Fame for over 20 years now. That's how good Larry Brown is. It always felt like at some point Larry Brown's going to be the head coach at North Carolina. How close did that ever come to happening?
I thought it came pretty close. You know, Coach called me. Well, I happened to be in his office. We were having training camp when I was with Philly when he stepped down. And I thought he was sick or something. That, it was October 8th or something like that. And he said, no, I'm all right, Larry. And he showed me his desk, and he had a stack of correspondence and expense accounts from like 1985. And he said, this is just too much now. And I'm fine, but I want to make sure Bill gets the job. And Bedore only gave Bill a 1-year deal. And Coach said, no, wait here, Larry. I'm going back. He came back and got Bill, an extra year or two. Because I don't think Bill would have taken it if it had happened after the season. And he left them a great team. And Bill did a great job, and it worked out. And then when Bill retired, he called me and he said, I'm going to tell them to give Roy the job because he's in college and you're in the pros, and it's going to be a much easier transition. I had a great job, which I was really fortunate. But, I wanted to follow Coach because I was hoping that Phil Ford could be on our staff and he could be the next coach, because I think Coach wanted a person of color someday to be the head coach of North Carolina. He recruited Charles when I was there, and I thought that meant a lot to him. And I felt, wow, this would be a great way for everything to fall into place. But now it didn't work out, but, Roy came back, did an unbelievable job, and now we got a great young coach who I'm confident is going to do a great job as well. And I think Coach Smith would be smiling right now.
Does that, and I understand there were circumstances that led to that, does that, in a long career where I'm guessing there isn't a ton of regret or frustration, is that a source of frustration for you that you were not the head coach here?
I don't know if frustration, because I've been handed a golden spoon, man. I mean, think of the opportunities I've had. So yeah. I don't think you should look at it like that. The only thing is I felt like there was such a connection between Coach McGuire, Coach Smith, and myself, that was meaningful for me. I don't know. You look back and you think of the success we've had because Roy came back. So you got to feel like, hey, it worked out all right.
You talked about sitting in the Kansas section that year, and there have been some times where Tar Heel fans have gotten their feelings hurt because you have had so many connections to so many different places. How has that felt to you? Where's basketball home to you, I guess?
Well, I think when you look at families come here, my family's back here. When you have 4 granddaughters that are part of Carolina, my 2 son-in-laws, went to Carolina, and I know how much they love. My 2 oldest daughters went to Carolina. My high school coach, I remember when I was playing, he said, someday I hope you're good enough to play at Carolina. And that blew me away that he would think that. So I have connections with Kansas and UCLA and now certainly SMU, but this is a special place for me. I'm living in Charlotte around family. When I come to a game and sit with my grandkids, there's nothing better. I don't think anybody could write a better script than that. And, I see my name on a banner. Coach Smith made a special criteria for me, because I was the first Olympian. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only reason mine put me up there. But, there's so much about this place that has impacted my life. I remember, and you guys know about Coach Smith and what a person. I remember when Matt fired Dave Hanners, Phil, Pat Sullivan. Coach called me up like he always did and said, I want you to hire Pat, Dave, and Phil. And hung up. I called him back. I said, Coach, I don't have a job for them now. The season started, and he said, you'll find a place. He used to do that. He used to do that with me in the draft. Like one year, he wouldn't let me draft Scott Williams. We had the 60th pick, the last pick in the draft, because he said if you draft Scott, he's got to play for you, and there's no guarantee. He won't make the money if he's a free agent. If you don't draft him, he can look at 29 other teams and maybe make extra money. So we didn't. He gets picked up by Chicago, wins 3 championships. He told me to draft Tommy Lagarde when he knew he was hurt. I drafted Salvadori and Dennis Weisick, Steve Previs, Billy Chamberlain, Donald Washington. It goes on. And it was all because Coach said this is what family does. And it's made so much to me. And I look back with Dave and Phil and Pat. They become so close to me, and I'm so proud of what they did and what they've accomplished. And it's all because of the relationships you had with people that went to Carolina because of Coach McGuire and Coach Smith, and what it meant to be part of this family.
College basketball is in a very different place than it was when you were coaching. It's in a different place than it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. Are you concerned at all about the current state of the game and kind of all the different things that now are around the game and have changed the game so much?
Yeah, when I see people leaving the game, coaches, it worries me. You know, when I went to school, you got room, board, tuition, books, and $15 a month laundry money. You couldn't work if you were on scholarship. And when we got that $15 check, it was like, wow, this is really... Then when I ended up going to SMU and helping Memphis and Washington, kids would get a cost of living allowance, Pell Grant, you know, clothing allowance. They were allowed to work. They never put in the equation the cost of that education. Not only SMU, it was $80,000 to go to school. Plus you got the best tutoring, the best health care, the best food. And so I always thought, God, if every kid could go to college like my kids went to school, where if they had to fly home or they had to buy some clothes or get a free meal somewhere, that would be fair for a student athlete. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize, you know, just how it would become now, because kids are making so much money now. They're making more money now than they're going to make after they're finished playing. And they're not saving this money. They don't know the value of the money. They're going to school not to get an education anymore. I didn't go to North Carolina to get an education, really. I went to play, but I had to get an education. I had to stay eligible to play. Kids transfer now. You go to major schools that you need 60 hours to graduate from that college. They don't even care about that anymore. So I'm kind of troubled by it all. I also am troubled. You know, I was at Washington. A friend of mine gave $2.4 million to NIL to give to the players. Well, some kids making $600,000, some is making $50,000. And I'm saying to myself, Coach Smith could never do that. 1 through 13 were the same. You didn't know who his favorite was. We were all treated the same. He couldn't do this now. And I'm wondering how kids care about playing, care about winning as much, care about an education, care about the kids that sit next to them. And that troubles me a little bit. I'm happy kids are able to make money. But I wish they would take that money and put it in escrow somewhere. Well, when they're finished playing, it has some value. Mm-hmm. You know, when I was at Washington, I had one kid drove me to where I was staying in a new Maserati. He had transferred from another school and had a new Mercedes. And I said to the kid, you know how much money it costs insurance and for you to park on campus and to park at your apartment? He didn't even know. It didn't even matter to him. And that troubles me a little bit.
How did you manage? You related to players for decades, and it seems like always connected in some way. And some players who other people had trouble connecting with, like an Allen Iverson, for example, you did it for decades. How did you manage to do that such that you could connect with them in a way that would enable them to be the best version of themselves on the court?
You might ask a lot of them, and they think I'm the devil. That's why I had great assistants with me, because they could always alibi and say, that's just Coach, he really loves you. But, again, Coach McGuire could say things to you that would hurt so much, and then 2 minutes later, he's kissing you on the lips and hugging you, and you didn't feel it. And Coach Smith never cursed at us. But we'd walk home from school and say, did he just call you an MF? But they both had a way of making you feel like you were important. Like I always say, I think Coach said it, the best leaders in any profession care about the people they lead, and the people that they lead know the caring is genuine. And I think that's probably the most important thing I learned, is that you got to be relentless in what you think you're telling them is right, if you know it's right. But you also have to understand the human beings, and you got to treat them in a way where they want to believe in you and believe in what you're doing, and know that you care enough to tell them to do the right things. So I've always tried that, but I wasn't always perfect with kids. There's some people I look at my career, I wish I could have done things a little bit differently. But kids then are different than kids now. Kids then wanted to please their coach. That was really important to them. They went to practice every day wanting to have that approval. That was important to them. Kids today now, they take, in some ways, not everybody, coaching as criticism. And it's not. You're trying to teach them to make them better. And that's something that's a real balance that I think, I don't know today if I would be able to do that, because when we made a mistake, we were corrected right away. If there was bad behavior, it was corrected right away. 1 through 13, if one person was affecting the other 12, there was no place for that one person. That on the off season, coach would try to rehabilitate and save everybody. But during the season, if anybody affected the team came first. And that was how I learned. And it's a little different now. If your best player is a really great person, it's the easiest job in the world. That guy to set the example. The thing you asked me about the difference, Coach Smith's program, the juniors and seniors taught the freshmen and sophomores how to behave, how to go to class, how to conduct yourself. Now I don't know if teams have that opportunity where the older kids are able to teach the young kids how to behave. Because if you don't play them, they're gone.
Yeah.
Even if you play them, they might be gone because the money. John Calipari told me an interesting thing about the NIL. He said, Jonesy, I'm going to pay you $300,000 because the car dealer down the street's going to give you that money. So he gets $300,000. He doesn't play, and he transfers. You come to see John and say, hey, I gave you $300,000 to play him, and he left. Where's my $300,000?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's actually happening.
Gosh, we've gone almost 45 minutes. We appreciate your time. Is there something that you look back on, and you've had so much success at so many places, that you are truly proud of? And when you look back and you think of your career, is there something about that you say, man, that's it right there. That defines it?
Oh, there's so many things. I was here when Charlie Scott matriculated here. I remember, you'll get a kick out of this, Coach sent me to Lebanon, Indiana to scout Rick Mount. Rick Mount was a great high school player, and I sat in the stands with Frank DeFore, was writing for Sports Illustrated. Rick was going to be the first guy on the cover, high school kid on the cover of Sports Illustrated. After the practice, there were a lot of head coaches there and me, and he kind of shook hands with everybody and walked down. I went to the payphone and called Coach, and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "He's all right." He said, "What do you mean?" "He's all right. He's the best high school player in America." I said, "Coach, he's all right. He's pretty good." He said, "Well, didn't he give you any love?" I said, "Well, not a lot, to tell you the truth." He said, "Well, I want you to come back. There's a kid in North Carolina going to a prep school that's been offered a scholarship to Davidson, and we can't afford not to look at every kid in our state. So I want you to come back." He always made me go to practice, and came to practice, drove to Laurinburg, and I think they played in the cafeteria on a linoleum floor, moved the chairs and stuff. Charlie ran up and down like 4 times. I ran to a payphone, said, "Coach, he's better than Rick Madden. You got to come in." Coach said, calm down, Larry." He said, "I know the headmaster. I'll find out their schedule and we'll go down to Laurinburg." I had no idea. I didn't even think the ACC is not integrated. It never even occurred to me. Even when I went to Carolina, I didn't even think, that there were no black players south of the Mason-Dixon line. And I had no idea there were so few black students on campus. And, Charles came, and, he was lucky he came with Eddie and, Jimmy Delaney at the time. And Charles told me he got more heat from Conan, North Carolina, from the historical black colleges friends. That's something that, sticks out in my mind because of Coach Smith and how he felt it was the right thing to do. That's the only reason he recruited Charles, because it was the right thing to do. I look back at all the people that have allowed me to coach. Nobody has had a better background than me, because of the people that have impacted my life that I got to play for. And to be able to share what I was taught from them with others is something. And then looking around now, everybody talks about coaching tree. I have a forest. That's why it's so difficult at night to watch the games, because, somebody at North Carolina A&T that I'm friendly with will win, and then King Rice might get beat at Monmouth. And there's so many people out there that have played a big part in my life. I think that would be the thing I'm most proud of, because I think Coach Smith and Coach McGuire and my high school coach would have expected that of me, to be able to give other people the opportunity that I've been afforded.